she's petting what she thinks is her cat. And she's puts her hand on it, and she's like, this isn't a cat. This is a bat.
Whoa.
And she freaks out. There's all kind of pandemonium and chaos. They throw the covers up, and she runs out into the hall, and she runs into a horde of bats. Welcome to another episode of Cases Gone Wild with your host. I'm John Marko. This is brought to you by Marko Law. Thank you for tuning in today. We have a very exciting show for you today, all about injuries that occur on land, which doesn't sound that crazy or gone wild, but trust me, it is. Crazy stuff involving land, people falling in pits, people falling through rafters, all kinds of crazy stuff. If you like our show, please subscribe. You can listen to us on Audible through your favorite platforms. Also, remember, if you want to watch us, because we got video, I'm looking into a video camera right now. You can watch us on the YouTube channel, the Marko Law YouTube channel, and you can watch us in action, see us as we talk about these crazy cases gone wild. So I'd like to introduce my guest today, and thank you for being here. A good friend, great attorney, and I would say Mr. Premises Liability Law. Through the bad times and now hopefully into the good times that we're going to talk about. We have Todd Stearn with us here today. He's a great lawyer. Todd has been doing this premises liability, which we're going to explain to you, for his entire career, right, Todd?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even want to say this on camera, but 29 years I've been practicing law already.
29 years. Yeah. And a very specific specialization, although Todd's done a lot of different stuff. He's focused on premises. You're the guy that people call when they have premises questions. I mean, I've called you and said, Todd, I got this crazy case. This guy fell through a hole. What do I do? How do I bring a case? And Todd, you're like the go-to guy. You have a wonderful wife and family. I know, Terry, you've been married for 31 years. You're on the Michigan Association of Justice with me, where you actually are the chair, the head of this premises section. There's no one in Michigan on our side who has more experience and knowledge on premises. That's not even a close call.
Thanks, John.
So,
I appreciate that. I think you're right. I think that's right.
You are.
There are a lot of people who do this kind of work, but I mean, I've been doing this a long time.
So thanks for being here. Tell us, what is premises liability?
Premises liability is essentially any case involving an injury on land. So it would be like your typical trip and fall case where somebody trips on a piece of wire strung across an aisle, or a slip and fall where you slip and fall in a parking lot at a grocery store or in a grocery store on a puddle of water. So it's really anything that involves injuries on property. And that can be anything. It can be a dog bite case. It can be, we're going to talk about some of these crazy cases that we've had. I mean, it can be cases on slides. It can be cases on trampolines. It can be anything on somebody's property.
Now, I mean, Todd, how often, are people getting hurt on these premises cases? Is there a lot of them?
I mean, if you look it up, according to the Center for Disease Control, it's like one of the leading causes of injuries for seniors. There's like hundreds of thousands of injuries on land every year, and they are serious injuries. So when we think about somebody slipping, we kind of think of like the person with the banana peel, right?
Yeah, right.
And people kind of chuckle or they laugh, but we see people with broken bones who need surgery. We had a case last year where a woman suffered a cord contusion and ended up dying. We've got closed head injury cases. I mean, think about the impact and the forces from falling. If you strike your head or you break a bone or you have an outstretched hand, you can really suffer just really catastrophic injuries.
Well, yeah, and for those who aren't lawyers and haven't followed the law, almost every state has certain laws that govern premises, right? So like a no-brainer is like, we're filming this at my house today. if I had like a pit under the floor and you walk into my house and you fall into a pit, I'm probably going to get sued, and my homeowner's insurance is probably going to have to pick that up, right?
Yeah.
But tell one thing that you've seen through your careers, we had in Michigan laws that were created by the former Michigan Supreme Court under the Engler Court that basically almost entirely did away with all of these rights of people who were getting hurt in some of the craziest, horrific premises cases. Tell the viewers about that a little bit for those who don't know.
So up until about 3-4 months ago, for the past 20 years or something, close to it, there was a case called Lugo versus Ameritech that was decided by the Michigan Supreme Court, and it basically said if you fall on something that you should have seen or could have seen, you have no case. You never even get to a jury. So the judge gets to decide if you should have seen something, you lose. And the two most famous cases that came out of that one was called Sidorowitz versus Chicken Shack. It was a woman who went into a Chicken Shack bathroom to use the bathroom, slipped and fell on clear water, and had horrible injuries. And the employees of the Chicken Shack testified in the case that the water was visible from a standing height. Now, the catch in the case is the woman who fell was blind. She could not see.
Fully blind?
Fully blind.
Well, dude, how the hell how is somebody who is fully blind supposed to see clear water on a floor?
That's exactly the point. But what the Supreme Court said was, we don't care what this woman could or couldn't see. We care what a reasonable, ordinary person would have seen. So if a reasonable, ordinary person could have and should have seen the water on the floor, no case.
Well, dude, so didn't this result in like thousands, tens of thousands of Michiganders who were seriously injured just having their whole case thrown out of court and having no recourse whatsoever?
So many times. And the other case I was going to mention is in these snow and ice cases, property owners are supposed to make sure that their properties are safe. And one of the things they have to do is make sure there's no snow or ice in their parking lots or on their sidewalks. Landlords are supposed to make sure that there's no snow or ice in the apartment complex. And what the Supreme Court said under this open and obvious law that we're talking about, if there is any indication it might be slippery out, so if there's snow on the grass, you should know there might be ice in the parking lot. So the Supreme Court said if there's any indication, any indicia of slipperiness, no case, period. And so in Michigan, we have snow and ice all through the winter, right?
Right.
And people were slipping and falling and getting hurt, and the Supreme Court was just dismissing all of these cases.
Well, dude, what's crazy to me about this is that's like almost encouraging businesses or even homeowners, but I would focus more on businesses to just like have dangerous conditions. Say like, we don't, here's a pit. We don't have to do anything because you can see it.
Absolutely. That was the whole thing, that like the Supreme Court was incentivizing businesses to make their properties more dangerous. Like the more dangerous, the more open the danger, the better for them, because people would not be able to sue. And I was told by somebody that our laws on slip and fall on ice cases were worse than Alaska.
Are you kidding me?
That's what I was told. Like the Alaskan laws were easier to sue somebody to hold people accountable for not taking care of their properties.
All the way up in like one of the iciest places in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy,
I know,
man.
yeah.
And so this has been a long time coming, but our Michigan Supreme Court recently said, we're doing away with all that crazy business, and we're going to go back to a more reasonable and kind of in accordance with everything, all the other states. There's differences in every little state. We all have our nuances. But we're back to like, let's be reasonable about this, right?
Right. So the Supreme Court a few months ago changed the law, turned it totally up on its head, and said, for now on, we're not going to let judges make this decision about what is open and obvious on casual observation.
Let the jury.
For now on, we're going to let a jury allocate fault. So how much fault was the defendant or the business owner for not taking care of their property? what percentage of fault was the injured person for not looking where they were going or not paying attention?
Which makes sense. I mean, like maybe both sides could share in some fault. And, you know, slip and fall cases are really hard, if we call them slip and fall cases, because a lot of people, you know, have the opinion, well, you should watch where you're going. On the other hand, if you have a business, you shouldn't have dangerous things out, and you should take care and try to make it safe for people so they don't get seriously hurt. So
you totally nailed it on its head. Those are the two things that we find when we talk to juries after trials. Number one, they want, by and large, people think if you own a business, you own an apartment complex, you should make it safe. By and large, people think when you're walking, you should be paying attention to your surroundings. So those are the two competing like things that go on in jurors' heads and in just everyday people's heads about these cases.
But that's what's reasonable now. So now the jury decides who's at fault, who's responsible. Let's be reasonable about this, right?
Absolutely. Now, the only catch to that, as you know, John, is if they find the injured person more than 50% at fault.
Yeah, game over.
Game over.
Game
they
over.
don't get any money. They are barred from recovery
Game
for non-economic damages.
Well, let's talk about some of these cases, because there is, you know, this isn't always just for those listeners. And I've had jurors tell me, oh, here we go, another slip and fall case. But it's not always some dude slipping on a banana peel. I mean,
right.
There is crazy cases, and I've been involved in, you know, they leave an elevator shaft. So you hit the button on an elevator, you walk into the elevator, and there's no cart there, and you fall to your death.
So what's interesting about that, John, is under the old law, I don't think that is a case, right? Because it's open. You can see that there's the open elevator shaft. I think most courts would have dismissed
kicked that out,
case.
which is crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Before I walk into an elevator, I don't pause, inspect to make sure there's a floor. When the thing, or I might be on my phone, or, you know, we're distracted by everyday life.
Yeah.
When I walk on an elevator, I expect there to not fall down 10 stories.
Absolutely.
I have a case right now against Wayne County Jail that's case has gone wild. This guard, the elevator has a maximum capacity. So elevators have a weight limit, right?
Yeah.
And this guard did not want to he was taking the women, it was at the women's jail, from their cells to like rec time, like recreational time, so they can play basketball, whatever. Rather than make 2 trips, he said, we're just going to stuff every single woman onto the elevator like sardines.
Wow.
Over the weight limit. They're on the top floor. They stuff all the women on. The elevator starts going, and it just goes like, you ever see the Tower of Terror at Disney World?
I actually kind of love that ride.
Yeah. Well, these women didn't have fun. They're stuffed,
right.
And the elevator falls 10 floors and crashes into the basement. So that's a premises case, right?
Absolutely.
And that's from the land. And
those are challenging cases too, though, because as you know, when you're suing the government has all kinds of immunities. They have all kinds of like exceptions.
They get special protection.
They get special
This
protection.
is what we're dealing with. So tell us about, over your career, tell us about some of your craziest cases gone wild.
Well, the first case I brought with me today, I just thought this was an interesting case. I had a landlord who owned he owned 250 rental properties throughout the Downriver area.
Okay. Is this like a slumlord type guy?
Total slumlord type guy. And the guy's name, I'll tell you his first name, but I won't tell you his last name because I don't want to say too much. But his first name was Shady. Let's call him Shady Smith.
Okay.
And every hearing,
Mr. Shady.
Every hearing, I would say, Your Honor, this guy is as shady as his name.
Yeah.
And I was planning on using that in like opening argument and closing argument, the whole thing. But he owned 250 properties, and what he would do is he would incorporate each property in a different corporate name. And then he had no insurance on any of these properties.
What? Now that's insane. So for our listeners, normally if you are running a business, you always have insurance.
But there's no requirement, actually, believe it or not.
But it's crazy. Like Marko Law, I have insurance. I get behind the wheel of my car. I have car insurance. I have homeowner's insurance here. Like, God forbid, one of you guys slips on a banana peel in my kitchen. So, like, that's crazy. And he's renting these properties, and then he's making each one its own business. And I'm assuming why he did that. So if something bad happened, he can just say, take the house.
And the houses aren't worth a lot, right? He's a slumlord, so he's buying a lot of mobile homes, a lot of like manufactured homes, and it, like you said, it's crazy. Like lawyers, like we have malpractice insurance, right, in case something goes wrong, but it's not required.
Right.
The state bar does not require us to do that. It's the same thing with homes. Most cities do not require homeowners insurance, even on rental properties.
I didn't know that. That's
And
interesting.
It's like nutty. Like when you get it behind a car, there is a requirement that you have insurance to drive a car, but not everybody has insurance either.
Right.
But so anyway, Shady Smith has these properties and no insurance. I didn't know that at the time I took the case in, but he had this one particular property. I brought a picture. I don't know if we can put this up.
Yeah,
or
we'll
do
put
it
this
later.
up for our viewers on YouTube. And if inaudible, just describe it for our non-YouTube viewers so they can know what we're talking about.
So there are building codes and there are city ordinances that require certain things for properties.
Yeah.
One of those things is there's got to be a handrail if a stairway is a certain height.
And these are laws set by the city or whatever.
Yeah.
And why did I mean, it's pretty obvious, but why do we need handrails on these things?
People tend to lose their balance as they're either going up or down stairs, and there's got to be something to keep
Brace
your
yourself.
balance. Right. So there's also a bunch of other things, riser heights. The height of the step has to be pretty close to uniform. It can't be more than, I don't know what the variance is, but there can't be variances. There have to be working exterior lights on outside stairways so people can see what they're doing at night.
Yeah. And, these are things, though, Todd, that, like, we don't really think about day to day, but they're everywhere. We just don't know it. And I think the reason is that our collective wisdom over hundreds of years is people get seriously messed up. It's not like we're going down an old castle stairway with a torch, anymore. And people have gotten hurt over the years. And so these regulations and standards, they try to make everything standard. So if you're walking up and down, you don't get hurt, right?
Absolutely. And there not only are there city ordinances, there's actually a building code that's been adopted by the state of Michigan. Like, these are building codes that everybody should be adhering to for everybody's safety, so we can make sure these places are safe. So my client was renting one of these properties. She decided to go and have a cigarette late at night. Light wasn't working. There's no handrail. The steps are kind of a mess, as you'll see on the picture. She walks outside of her house.
Yeah, and just so that for our viewers, I mean, it's almost just like some weird looking slabs. There's like a crappy slab of discolored cement. Then it looks like these stairs are like all different sizes, dude. It looks like the first step is very small, and then the last step look like double size, which is bizarre.
Yeah, they're different widths, they're different heights. They're just, as you'll see, not very safe.
No, it looks like, you ever see the Trailer Park Boys, that show? It looks like Mr. Leahy built these steps while drinking some whiskey or something. But anyways, I digress. So, all right, so what happens?
So she falls as she's exiting the property, suffers serious injuries, and we bring a lawsuit against this shady guy. And it's interesting, he hires a lawyer, and he's spending a ton of money to defend the case, even though he has no insurance. And
how bad's the lady hurt?
Very bad. She had fractures. She had surgery.
My God.
Yeah. And this is common. We see this a lot, where people have broken ankles, people have shoulder rotator cuff tears, people have fractured wrists, all these things where there has to be hardware put in, and rods and pins and plates and screws and the whole deal.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's like really hard for people, right? You can't work. You have to take time off work. You've got medical bills that accumulate. And it's not like an auto case where you've got no fault insurance that will cover all of these things. In premises cases, in slip and fall and trip and fall cases, there's no money coming in while you're waiting for your case to settle or to go to trial.
And so it can just devastate people's lives, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
And the scary thing is this can happen kind of anywhere at any time to anyone. I guess that's why these laws are try to make it reasonably safe. I mean, there's always going to be, look, you could trip and fall just walking down the street to go to the park, right?
That one little moment in your life can just change everything. You tripping on a sidewalk and breaking a bone, it can change everything. It can go from you having like a great life where you're working and you've got kids and you can spend time with family, to you laying in a bed and not being able to do anything with no money coming in.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's what happened to this woman.
It's what happened to this woman, yeah. So, when there's no insurance, it's also tricky to figure out how you're going to get paid at the end of the case.
That's right.
Because there's no insurance policy to pay. But we continued taking this case because we thought it was important to this woman and we thought she should have some justice here, right? So we brought this case. At the end of the case, we were getting ready to try this case in October, actually. I thought we were trying it in Wayne County. We get a motion in limine, and maybe we can explain what that is. Before you go to trial, you can file special requests with the judge asking that the judge not allow certain evidence to come into the case for various reasons, right? It's not relevant. It's overly prejudicial. It's going to cause too much prejudice among the jury.
And you do this before, right? Because I've been in trials where it's like, this comes up a lot with like criminal backgrounds and stuff. Like, your guy was convicted of, I don't know, like theft when he was like, 18 years old or something. And then if you wait till trial, it's too late.
If it comes out and the jury hears it,
right,
can
the
really
judge can
poison
say,
the jury.
yeah. So like I've been in a trial. It's like I just did one in Bay City where one of the defense witnesses was a 4-time convicted felon, drug dealer, burglar, and theft, and he was like the star witness. They should have filed a motion before. So what happened was we're all standing up there in front of the jury and the judge, and I say, I knew I had one shot, right, before they objected. So I said, sir, isn't it true that you're a 4-time convicted drug dealer, felon, burglar, and thief?
Wow.
Now, if they object, it's already done. It's already out in front of the jury. So
there's no putting that back in the bottle.
Yeah.
Once it's out, it's out.
So, okay, sorry to interrupt you. So, so there's this special motion hearing. And where does this case go wild, Todd? Because it just sounds like some lady slipped. It sounds horrible, but tell me where this case gets wild.
Well, we get this motion from the other side asking the judge to prevent any discussion or argument about, and this was the crazy part, it turns out this shady guy was bribing city officials, and so one of the defenses was that the city had inspected the property and therefore it was perfectly safe. Meanwhile, he's bribing these same city officials.
Wait a minute. So this slumlord has to get his property certified by the city, right?
Yeah.
And the city sends out an inspector or whatever to make sure that everything's up to code.
Exactly.
And this shady dude was paying off city officials to get good results, obviously.
That's exactly what we found out, in the case.
Oh, that's crazy. So what happened?
So, we ended up settling the case shortly after we found that out because there's no way they could try the case. And they paid 6 figures on a case where there was no insurance.
That's huge.
So
huge.
That was a good result for this woman who I felt horrible for because she had just gone through so much. And we were never sure if we were going to be able to collect on this case. Even if we went to trial, we got $1 million verdict or $10 million verdict, whatever it was. There was no insurance coverage, so we were never sure that we would ever get any money on it.
And that's always the worst because people will be like seriously messed up and they come to me and I'm like, there's no insurance. There's only so much that you can do. For example, I had a case where there was a doctor who was sexually assaulting patients, okay? And we sued him, and the insurance company said, we're not covering this because it did not involve his, medical discretion. He's just a pervert who's doing illegal things. And so we went, and I felt so bad for these women because there was like 3 women. We went through the whole process, which costs a lot of money, costs a lot of time. And as plaintiffs' lawyers, we don't get paid. We're not billing the insurance company by the hour. We only get paid when we collect money. So it's like an all or nothing proposition. And we got a big judgment against this doctor for millions of dollars, but these women haven't seen one penny. Not one penny. Because the guy's destitute, he lost his license, he
can file for bankruptcy. Yep.
And so it's really a shame and a travesty. I don't know what the answer is.
But it is to your credit, good for you, that you took that as far as you did. And you tried to help those women, and you gave them at least some closure, right? Because they got the judgment, and they knew that they were exonerated for whatever it was. It
Right.
wasn't their fault. You held this doctor accountable. So
Right.
good for you.
Yeah, I mean, we do what we can do, and but it is a challenging thing. So that's a pretty crazy case.
It was a crazy case, but another funny, you'll just kind of get a kick out of this, I think. One of the motions in limine in that case was they didn't want me calling this guy Shady.
Isn't that his name?
They wanted me calling him Mr. Smith. It was,
Stop
Your Honor,
it.
don't let them call him Shady
Stop
throughout
it.
this case.
Stop it. Now, this was not the Slim Shady, just so we
This
could...
was not the Slim Shady.
This was not
no.
the Slim Shady. We love Eminem on the show.
Exactly.
He's a great Detroiter. And wow, this is crazy. So tell me about some other kind of crazy premises cases that you've done.
So another case I brought, and we can show a picture of this also, there was a business in northern Oakland County, and the business owner had owned a building for 20 years plus. There was a metal plate on the sidewalk next to the building. If you can imagine like a metal plate just laying flat on a sidewalk.
All right, so for those of us listening, so just so we understand, this is like there's a stairway, like a cement stairway that goes to, what is that, like the basement or something?
It turns out that there were some utilities in the basement back in the 50s, and they were no longer being used. They were like monitors, or what do they call those things that like gas gauges?
Yeah,
you can
like
read
gas
the
meters or something?
Meters, yes.
Okay.
And all of the meters had been made remote, so there was no need to use this basement anymore.
So there's basically like a pit with stairs that is right on the, is this right on the sidewalk where people walk?
Absolutely, right on the sidewalk where people walk.
And
so
it
if you can
doesn't look
imagine,
like
if you've ever been to New York and you're walking on the sidewalk and there's like grates, metal grates.
Yeah, metal grates that go down to the subway.
Go
and
down to
stuff.
the subway. Sometimes they go down to restaurants, things like that. You see them in Michigan once in a while, like especially in the city of Detroit. You'll see these metal plates on the roadway.
Right, right. And there's no like barriers around the pit.
No, there was no fencing. There were no caution cones. There were no warning signs. There was nothing like that.
And then on top of the pit, there's a metal, just so it looks like it's just part of the street.
You would have never known there was a stairway under it. So it was just literally like a metal plate covering on top of a sidewalk.
Dude, this is always like whenever I walk over these metal grates, like I'm not scared, but in the back of my mind, I'm always like, man, it would be horrible if these grates like fell loose or like fell out, because that's like a death drop.
I wonder how many people have that thought as they're walking over like those grates. I mean, I have that same thought too. Like when I walk over them, I hope this thing holds me up.
Yeah. So, well, I think we all know what happened here. So tell the listeners. So tell the listeners about your client and kind of what happened.
So I got a great client, so nice, beautiful woman in her 50s. She's walking with her husband, and she takes one step on this metal plate, and it collapses under her weight. She falls into the stairwell.
So she's walking down the sidewalk. The metal plate just like collapses.
She totally gives way.
And she just drops.
She drops all the way into the stairwell. It's probably about 15 feet down.
Oh, my God.
And suffers a head injury, bad head injury, and she also suffered a bad injury to her leg. So she developed some like necrotic tissue, which means dying tissue on her leg when she struck her leg on something.
Did she break her leg?
She did not break her leg, but this dying tissue turned into a hematoma, which is like a big blood clot, which had to be surgically removed, and she's left with this permanent disfigurement on her leg. So it's like almost like a hole in her leg.
Yeah.
So it was bad injuries. And as you know, John, so this case, I mean, it's just wild in and of itself, right? The fact that you could be walking on a regular old sidewalk next to a business and a metal plate collapses under your weight.
Yeah, dude. And it's like, that is the scariest thing, because it's just like this freak thing and your whole life has changed.
And she described that as she's feeling the sensation of falling, like what's going through her head is, what is happening here? Like,
what the F is going on?
What the F is happening as she's falling, through this pit?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. So the big defense, and this is maybe interesting for lawyers who are watching this, the big defense in the case is notice. And this is a defense we see a lot. And that defense says, and this is hard for people to believe if they're not lawyers, right?
Yeah.
We have to be able to prove that the landowner, the business owner, knew or should have known that there was a problem with that plate. If I can't prove that, I lose. And this whole case, that's the entire argument. The business owner kept saying, how was I supposed to know this plate was going to collapse? It never had any prior problems. It was never loose. It was never wobbly. Nobody ever complained about it.
Well, plates aren't just supposed to collapse. I mean, something went wrong, and this thing looks like it was from the early 1900s or something.
He had only owned the building for 20 years, and in that time he said it was totally safe and totally stable, which was really hard to explain to my client too. Like, if the jury thinks that he didn't know or shouldn't have known, we have a problem here.
Right. And I guess the point there is, in the law, what they were trying to do was say, like, you're not responsible for every single thing that happens on your property. It's like you have to just be reasonable about things that you know about, right?
Or you should know about. And the law actually says you have a duty to inspect your property to make sure it's safe.
Right, which makes sense.
But he was saying, even an inspection, what's it gonna? There's nothing I could do. I would have had to remove the plate to inspect the cement around to see if the bolts were still attached. How was I supposed to figure this out?
And so how did you get around that legal defense?
Well, I had two experts who came in and testified, so that was one thing.
Did you try this case?
I did not try this case, but they testified, in deposition.
Yeah,
we just settled this case last week, actually.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. But both of them said a reasonable inspection would have uncovered the fact that the cement was deteriorating and had been deteriorating for a long time. It turned out that one of the sides of the metal plate had no support at all. So the metal plate was only supported on three sides. But I was worried about that argument. I was concerned about it all along.
Because it's almost like a get out of jail free card for a defense.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem is for us, and we've talked about this on other shows, is they only have to poke one hole in our balloon for it to pop, right? So like it used to be, open and obvious, we lose.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't have notice, we lose. Oh, your lady's not that hurt. There's like so many different ways for a case to go sideways.
Absolutely. I like to say we're building a building, right? We're putting one brick in at a time. We're building this building, and all the defense has to do is take one brick out for that building to fall over.
Yeah.
And that's all they do. They just look for that one little thing they can hang their hat on.
Yeah, I had so you settled this case.
Yes.
It's settled. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Well, now I'm going to be even more worried when I walk over these grates or these freak things that could happen.
Every time I'm in New York now, or anytime I'm in Detroit and I see one of these things, I'm like, don't walk over that. Let's walk around.
Yeah, let's walk around.
I
had a crazy case at a school with like the same, you talk about this notice, like, oh, we didn't know, it's not our fault. This little kindergartner's walking out the front door, and the front door collapses. And it was held up by like a metal frame, but the frame had rusted out. And so, we said, look, okay, yeah, if this was like a brand new door frame but that's not what happened. This thing was like 50 years old. It was rusted out. The repair, usually where there's smoke, there's fire, right? So the repair people were like, yeah, like we always just patched it. And then it had 3 bolts that held this frame up. All 3 bolts don't just fail all at once, right? So what happens is one bolt fails because it's old and rusted. Then the thing gets real loose. Then a second bolt fails. So then it's just hanging on by one. And
that takes time.
That takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Did you hear about I guess this would count as a premises case, but did you hear about our Halloween special that we just filed up in Alpena?
I did not hear about this.
Okay, this is a case gone wild. And I'd like your insight on this case, just in time for Halloween. So these 7 women went and graduated from Alpena High School. And they had their class reunion. It was like their 50th reunion or something, right?
Okay.
So these women, and they all live different places because they all some left Alpena, some went across the country. And they say, let's rent out an Airbnb and all hang out together, and we can drink wine and play cards and go to the reunion and have fun and play board games and stuff. So they go online on Airbnb and they rent out this beautiful Airbnb called the Castle. It's literally called the Castle. So think Dracula type stuff. All right.
I'm thinking like medieval Europe or something. Yeah.
Yes. It had like a turret room. And I'll tell you, the Airbnb looks pretty cool. And so they rent out this place called the Castle and they have a great night. You know, they go to their reunion, whatever. They are, you know, hang out. They're talking. They're like rekindling old times. And they all go to bed. All right. And the one woman wakes up and she hears someone in the house.
Okay.
And she's like, oh my God, somebody is breaking in to the house, the castle. And they're all in separate rooms.
There's no motor on this castle, apparently.
There's no motor on the cat. The drawbridge was down. So she's petting what she thinks is her cat. And she puts her hand on it and she's like, this isn't a cat. This is a bat.
Whoa.
And she freaks out. There's all kind of pandemonium and chaos. They throw the covers up and she runs out into the hall and she runs into a horde of bats.
Wow.
And these bats start biting them and clawing them. And I mean, just imagine being you're in the castle and all of a sudden it's dark, right? And
it's unfamiliar surroundings,
unfamiliar. Right? There's a swarm of bats.
Yeah.
So these women take these sheets or whatever and are putting them above them like ghosts, you know, to try to get through this bat swarm. And they get to the stairs and the stairs are blocked because there was a horde of bats that had, you know, bats hang
How
from
many
the ceiling.
bats are there? I
Dude,
mean, just
think
hundreds of bats?
Think Dracula.
Really?
Okay. Think
And
Castlevania.
bats are just so scary anyway. They just seem scary.
They seem, dude,
Yeah.
It's like a rat with wings and they have rabies and stuff. So they get to the stairs to try to escape this castle, this house of horror that they now find themselves trapped in. And there's hundreds of bats that are hanging from the ceiling in the passageway to get out. So they can't go down the stairs.
The hairs are standing up on the back of my neck right now listening to this.
It's crazy.
It's like nuts.
So what they do is they run back to their bedroom, they put the covers over them, and they like have to sleep it out until morning as there's just massive amounts of bats flying around the house and flying into them, doing all kinds of stuff. They had to get rabies shots. And so here's the kicker, right? Because we talk about notice, right? So sounds like a good case to the average viewer, right? You shouldn't be attacked by a horde of bats when you rent an Airbnb.
I would think that should be like on the Airbnb thing, like
Yeah.
guaranteed, no bats.
Yeah, bat-free zone.
Bat-free
Like,
zone.
dude, where's the disclaimer on that? Where's the warning? You may be attacked by vampire bats at our place. I am anticipating that the defense is going to say, yeah, they admit they were attacked by bats. They admit they shouldn't have been, but I think it's going to be, well, we didn't have notice that you could be attacked by bats at our...
We didn't know bats might be in the castle.
Right,
Is that what they're going to say?
But so apparently they talked to there was an inspector that came the next day and they found bat guano, which is bat shit and piss,
Yeah.
all the way down into the basement walls. So these bats had obviously been in this crypt or whatever you want to call it, in this castle, shitting and pissing for some time.
Yeah.
Because it had run down the walls and was visible.
That should be noticed for you.
Yeah, that should be noticed, right?
Nobody had complained about this? Like no prior renters had complained about it?
We're going to find out. The homeowner said, I didn't have any notice, but we'll find out. You know, some things with these Airbnbs is a lot of times you have people that own these that aren't even in the area. You know, they might live in
Absentee
Florida.
landlords, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I can't say that about this case yet because we're just starting. But, you know, a lot of times it's not like the only house. And they're not there all the time either. Sometimes they just pay people to, like, go clean up or whatever.
You know what's interesting also is my understanding, at least as of right now in Michigan, you can't sue Airbnb. They're like a third-party administrator. You can sue the owner of the property.
Yeah.
And Airbnb sometimes, or most of the time, I think, will insure the place.
Yeah,
But you cannot name Airbnb as a defendant.
Well, we'll see. I did.
Did you?
And,
okay,
I'll
I'll be interested to see how that goes.
Yeah, we're going to give them house, so we'll
Yeah.
see. I mean, it's certainly, and they had a lot of press. This was on NBC National News, and we filed it right around Halloween because I thought it was kind of a fitting horror story of who the hell. I mean, have you ever stayed in an Airbnb?
Yeah.
Like,
but
I've had good
didn't have
experiences.
bats in my belfry.
I didn't have bats. Yeah, that's crazy. But you hear about these cases. People stay at Airbnbs and they'll be like peeping Toms. You know, like
that's a big thing right now.
Sex cameras.
Yeah.
I've
heard a lot of horror stories about that.
Have you ever had a sex camera tape? On our last episode,
No.
we were talking about sex lies and videotapes. We had, there was that tanning case. And this is a premises case too. It's not a slip and fall, but these are all kinds of property related cases we're talking about. This person went to the tanning booth and there was a dude who had set up secret peeping cameras. So he was watching the women get dressed and undressed. I mean, it's creepy stuff.
It's a crazy case.
It's crazy.
We've been hearing about a lot of Airbnbs where the owners set up cameras. And I think Airbnb actually has got to take some steps to like get that under control.
I think so too. Now, look, personally, if they want to see my white butt getting in and out of bed, I mean, I don't have much concern. But like when it comes to like my kids and stuff, that's an invasion of privacy, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or if you're there with your wife or your girlfriend or your significant other.
Right.
mean,
They should be paying me for that footage. I have a creative right to that.
There you go.
Right. So, okay. So tell us about some more crazy premises cases.
Well, the other case I was going to talk a little bit about was the slide case. So I have a case out near Ann Arbor. This is a case I did try where a guy owned a cider mill. And he was rummaging around in a barn, and he found a corrugated tube. It's about 3 feet wide, 20 feet long.
All right, now describe, what is a corrugated tube?
Like imagine very hard plastic black tubing that's kind of wavy.
Okay.
It's got like waves in it. So it's
like
not,
to like make sewers and ditches and stuff?
Exactly. It's like a sewer pipe, sewer
Okay.
grade. And so he's like, I wonder what I could do with this 20-foot long plastic tube. He decides to set it up as a slide on his cider mill for people to use, and he literally straps this thing to a couple of 2x4s and leans it up against some bales of hay. Now, it turns out there are a lot of standards and regulations for slides because they can be really dangerous.
Yeah, dude. I had a slide case once that I'll tell you about, but I learned through that case. I mean, I never thought who could get hurt on a slide, right?
Right.
But people get paralyzed on slides if you go down on top of another because your foot, where the person's foot comes down, it can hit them in the neck, which can sever your spinal cord.
For sure.
There's been kids who have died and who have been paralyzed on slides. And remember at Belle Isle, they had to redo the slide.
That came up kind of right before our trial, believe it or not, where the kid was on the slide.
Yeah.
And they caught it on camera. He was like flying off of the slide as he was going
flying
down
off the slide. They built this slide that did not meet standards, and it was like launching little kids off the slide. And this was not a slide at your local playground. This was like a slide that was like 100 feet high or something. It was insane. It was like you had to climb up a set of stairs to get there.
Absolutely.
So anyway, sorry to interrupt you. So, so this dude sets up a homemade slide. It sounds like some amusement park of horrors or something.
Absolutely. And so the standards, I mean, slides, the opening at the bottom of the slide cannot be too high, right? Because you don't want to fall too far. It can't be too low because you need time to adjust from a sitting position to a standing position. It's supposed to have a horizontal landing at the bottom. It's supposed to have a soft ground covering like wood chips or rubber mulch or something like that.
Yeah.
All these things that you're supposed to do with a slide, this guy did none of them.
Oh my God.
He didn't even look. He never even did like an internet check to see like what am I supposed to do with the slide, right? So he posts this slide up, and I've got a woman who.
How big is the slide?
It was 20 feet long.
Okay.
And so I've got
and is it going like down a hill or something?
Yeah, he literally propped it up against some bales of hay. We can show this.
Yeah.
We'll show this to the viewers later, but
ouch.
And I've got a lady who goes down the slide, and she bashes the back of her head on the slide as she falls out of the chute at the bottom.
All right, and just for our listeners who aren't going to see this on our YouTube channel here, there's like this plastic tube that looks like I have in my backyard for drainage. And then there's just these like 4x4s at the end. So she gets shot out. There's like a little drop onto looks like the dirt with some hay, but there's not a lot of hay.
No, the hay was minimal, if any.
Okay, and then so she slides out, and then her head clicks back and bashes the thing.
We actually had video of this because the woman's granddaughter who was with her had been taping this the entire time. So
oh my God.
Kind of see her drop out and smash the back of her head. One of the biggest challenges for me in the case was it didn't look like she hit her head that hard in the video. And so we did these diagrams, which I had showed you before, but we can show the viewers. I actually had a woman reconstruct this doing a biomechanics reconstruction to show exactly what happened as she gets to the bottom of the slide, where she suffered a very serious brain injury because she smashed kind of the base of her skull.
And so what ended up happening with this case?
Well,
they admit, hey, this homemade slide was dangerous?
No way. They never did. This was a case they defended very aggressively. We ended up finding out that the owner of the cider mill had entered into a consent judgment with the county a few years earlier because he had been doing so many dangerous things on his property.
Oh my God.
One of the things that he had agreed to in an order was that he wouldn't construct anything on his property without an inspection by the county.
Well, what kind of dangerous things was this dude doing on his property?
Somebody had fallen off of one of his hay rides and died.
Oh my gosh!
He had constructed this farm gates that was allowing animals out. He had there were all kinds of safety violations.
Why is this guy doing all this homemade stuff?
I can't answer that, but I can tell you that one of the defenses in the case was he was just a rural guy in a rural area and just was setting these things up for fun. And the defense attorney in jury selection would ask questions like, has anybody here ever swung from a rope into the water? And somebody just set that rope up. They didn't look at the internet. They didn't look at any instruction manuals.
Yeah.
Or has anybody been on a tire swing? Or has anybody ever, he was going through all these things.
I understand the force of that argument, but I think it's different if you're running a business for profit and you're having all these people come in. If I have a tire swing company and you come to my house and pay me to go use the tire swing, I better damn make sure that it's not going to drop you on some jagged rocks or something.
So he was not charging for the slide.
Oh, okay.
So people were going there to buy cider and donuts.
But he got a commercial benefit from the slide. The little kid said, "Dad, Mommy, bring me to the slides," and then they would buy donuts and stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. But to your point, this is another thing the defense made a big deal out of. We weren't charging for the slide. It was a voluntary thing. You didn't have to go down it. You weren't paying for it. So he was trying to make a lot of hay. No pun intended.
Yeah, he needed more hay at the bottom of the slide is what they needed. So what ended up happening?
Well, part of the crazy thing was, we picked a jury on this case in August of 2022. And this is part of the wild thing that went on. Because it's a cider mill, the owner was kind of a local celebrity. People knew about some of his...
What county was this in?
In Washtenaw.
Okay, Ann Arbor, yeah. Okay.
And so people knew this guy, and they knew he had these prior problems with his property. And we start picking a jury. We spend 3-4 hours picking a jury, and people are like, I know this guy. I can't be fair. One woman said, she said, I've been a neighbor of this guy for 20 years, and I cannot be fair because I've seen so much go on that property.
Oh my! And did all the jurors hear that?
All the jurors heard it, and then another woman had dated this guy's son. I mean, it was just this bizarre set of
when you say local
circumstances.
celebrity, it was like not a good thing. He was like a bad celebrity, you know?
Exactly. He was like kind of known in the community as doing things a little, to use the word from earlier, a little shady.
Yeah.
So we actually mistried that case. It was the first time in my career we ran out of jurors.
Because
have you ever had that happen?
I have never. I've come darn close. But so what happens for our listeners that aren't lawyers is when you pick a jury, they bring in a bunch of people and put them in a room. 50 people around, depending on the court. And then of those people, 8 people or 10 or whatever the judge decides go up into the jury box, and then those people can get filtered through. So if they say they can't sit because they can't be fair, or they know this guy has a Texas Chainsaw Massacre type,
we get to ask
setup.
questions of these people to just make sure that they can be fair, and we get to go through this whole process with them.
So you guys went through all these jurors, and there was just people that were like, I can't be fair because of this.
There's like maybe 40 or 50 people that we went through.
Wow, I've never had that happen.
We got to the end. We had 6 people. So you want to put 8 people because you need at least 6, and 1 or 2 alternates. We're down to 6 people in the jury box. There were only 3 people left in the galley. I say to the defense attorney, I will agree not to waste any more of my challenges if you agree. And he said, no, I will not agree to that because we don't know what these people are going to be like. So maybe to explain that to the audience.
Yeah. Each side gets 3 jurors that you can kick off just for any reason that you want except for race or gender.
Right.
So, you could say, I don't like this guy. He reminds me of my dad, or, and I love my dad. So that's a bad analogy, but, for whatever reason you want.
You just get a bad vibe, like something. They look at you funny and you're not sure if you're going to like them. Or
exactly. So what happened? So
we literally mistried the case. The judge declared a mistrial. We had to start over again in February of 2023.
Oh my gosh.
So we had to bring all of our experts back. We had to go take depositions of all the doctors again.
My God.
I think I had 18 witnesses in this case, and we had to reorganize
everything.
And re-subpoena everybody and get everybody back to court and everything.
It's such a nightmare. People don't understand. It's not like on the TV show or like, you just walk into the courtroom and everything falls into place. It's a logistical nightmare to get these things to trial.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have a person testify at 9:00, right? And you're not exactly sure how long their testimony is going to be. Are they going to be up on the stand for 15 minutes?
And then the judge is like, where's your next witness? Where's your next witness?
Counsel, get your next witness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
what happened in this case, Todd?
So we ended up trying it in February. The highest offer in this case before trial was $500.
Are you kidding me?
I am not kidding you.
$500?
$500.
What? That wouldn't even buy that much cider.
I'm not sure why. I don't know why the insurance company didn't see it. I don't know what was going on. But
and you had how much in costs in on the case?
I think at the end of the day, we had like $50,000 that we had put into this.
Wow.
thing. Yeah.
So you would they forced you to try the case.
Totally forced
me
to try the case. So
you would literally, if you would have accepted that offer, the client would have got nothing, and you would have spent $49,500 of your own money.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Exactly right. Yeah.
I mean, it serves them right for being so ridiculous. So what happened?
So the jury came back with a huge verdict, and everybody was happy.
Congratulations.
And it was a very good defense attorney. I have nothing but respect for the guy. He did a good job. He's with a bigger firm in Detroit, but he's actually in Ann Arbor, but they have a Detroit office. But the jury saw through this, and justice was delivered to my client, thank God, because I was kind of stressing about it.
Anytime you have that type of money in on a case, I mean, you stress because you care about the client.
Yep.
But you stress also because nobody wants to lose, right?
Yep.
And there's a lot on the line. You don't want to lose for the client. You don't want to lose for your own ego.
Yeah.
And then you don't want to lose for your pocketbook either. I mean, we invest our time, money, and energy in these cases. You don't want to lose $50,000. And not only are you losing that $50,000, you're losing all your time. So it's really, when we lose big.
And yeah, it's for me, like I've tried a lot of cases, almost 100 cases probably. And I've won a lot of cases, but nobody's perfect, and we all lose once in a while.
Right.
You know, I've lost some cases. One of the worst feelings for me isn't losing, because I know I did a good job. I know I did everything I could for the client. Sometimes it just doesn't go my way. But going back to the office, right, and telling your staff, it didn't go my way this time, and everybody's like, oh. And you don't want them to feel that way, right? Because it's like, I did a good job. I know I did a good job. It just, the jury didn't get it.
Sometimes you can't. The greatest lawyers lose cases. Yeah. And if they tell you they've never lost a case, they're either lying or they haven't tried enough cases.
Absolutely. I try and tell clients that all the time. Yeah.
So I had a slide case. I think I might have talked about it on another show, but it was on a cruise ship. Have you ever done a cruise ship case?
No.
So you have to file them in Miami in federal court. And this lady from Michigan got stuck on a slide on a cruise ship, and they sent a big dude down. They're supposed to clear the slides by law, by protocol.
Yeah.
Because of the injuries that you can talk about. And this dude came down. This lady was really big. She was a big lady. The water flow wasn't enough, so she got stuck, and she's in the middle screaming, "Help, I'm stuck." And this dude just comes on a water slide, comes blasting down and blasts into her head.
Wow.
And she was crazy, though. She said this in her depth. She said, the defense attorney said, well, what part of the guy's body hit you? And she says, his penis hit me. And he said, excuse me? And she goes, yeah. She goes, he had this big, I'm not making this up. Listeners are going to say I'm lying.
I don't think you could make this up.
She's saying he had a big penis, and it slapped me and hit my face as his legs hit me, and it left an indent on my face. And the defense attorney says, what are you talking about? And she said, yeah, like there was a mark on my face where you could see the head of his penis hit me.
No, that's a wild
And
case.
I'm like, okay, lady. Like she was a nice lady. She had a brain injury. Okay. She had some issues.
Yeah.
And then they were like, well, do you have pictures of the penis indent on your face? And she's like, no. And yeah, we settled that case.
We're going to need pictures of the man's privates to see if it lines up with the
I'm like, what are you
going to
do? Like a plaster casting of the penis to like compare like a footprint, murder investigation. And I've had other slide cases that didn't involve penis to face trauma, but I had a slide case against McDonald's. And
because they have those play structures.
You know those play structures?
Yeah.
Well, on this play structure, kids love to run up slides. I ran up slides as a kid, and
love it. Used to do it all the time.
All the time, right? You see how far you can get up the slide.
Yep.
Well, this play structure was old. It was from like the 80s. Okay, it was out in a rural area, and on what they did, McDonald's did, and the manufacturer really, who McDonald's had installed these, had padding, because the slide itself is a very hard plastic. When I say hard, I mean it is hard. You could like use it as a tool.
Yeah.
And the slide itself had foam around the sharp edge where you got into the slide, so if you hit your head, it wouldn't cut your head open. The problem was the exit of the slide did not. And this little boy tried to run up the slide. He slipped, his head hit the plastic, and it cut his head open. Bad.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
And he had a brain injury as a result. And so we sued the manufacturer of the slide, and we also sued McDonald's for the injuries that were caused. And we got a decent settlement. But those cases, I always find, Todd, are hard. And they're defended very heavily because they always try to blame the plaintiff, right?
Always.
Like, you shouldn't have ran up the slide.
You should have been looking where you were going. You shouldn't have run up the slide. You should have
done this.
Done whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So for attorneys who, like I always tell people, like attorneys who do other work, they do auto cases, like car crash cases.
Yeah.
Or they do medical malpractice, and they want to jump into some of these trip and fall and slip and fall type cases, I always say be careful, because there's a lot of nuances. There's a lot of subtle things in the law that you might not be aware of that's a little different than other areas of personal injury law.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why you got to be careful, and that's why we have you, the expert on premises. That's why I call
Right.
you. Well, thanks a lot for being on the show today. And
It was a lot of fun, John. Thanks.
It was awesome, man. Again, Todd Stearn. So any premises case, he's the man. So this has been another great episode of Cases Gone Wild. If you like our show, please give us a like. Please subscribe. Please share it with your friends. You can add us as a favorite. If you or a loved one needs legal help, please don't hesitate to reach out. We can get you to the right people, the right specialists. You have a premises case, we can make sure we connect you with Todd. We can make sure that you're taken care of and you get justice for what happened to you. Look for us online, www.markolaw.com, M-A-R-K-O law.com, or give us a call, 313-777-7-LAW. Until next time, we'll see you in 2 weeks on the next Cases Gone Wild.